Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a whole stack of sources, articles, research, historical data, the latest long-range forecasts, and we really boil it all down to the key insights tailored just for you.
That's the goal.
And today we're diving deep into a really fascinating and honestly pretty dynamic weather picture that seems to be shaping up for Ashley County, Arkansas for this coming autumn. This deep dive actually comes as a special request from K. Brad Barfield over at ACN's Facebook page. So Brad and all the followers over at ACN, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've really loved seeing your enthusiasm for our work in the past, and we're genuinely thrilled to put together this custom-tailored look at, as you put it, the patterns that seem to be shaping up in the weather for your community.
It's definitely a complex forecast, and it demands a really informed perspective. We're excited to provide that.
So what's the mission here? What are we trying to unpack?
Our mission today is exactly that, to unpack a really comprehensive autumn 2025 weather outlook, specifically tailored for Ashley County. We want to go beyond just, the temperature numbers.
Right.
We want to highlight the key climatic influences that are really at play, look at the expected anomalies, how things might differ from the usual patterns, and maybe most importantly, talk about the practical implications. What does this mean for anyone living, working, or planning in the area from, say, mid-August right through Christmas?
Okay.
And to do that, we've meticulously combined historical climate data with the very latest future projections from the leading climate centers to try and give you a clear, actionable, and maybe even surprising picture of what's likely ahead.
Okay, surprising definitely catches my ear. You mentioned an executive summary earlier hinting at a season of extremes. Let's start pulling back the layers on that. What are these underlying forces creating this potentially wild ride, and what exactly does this bifurcated precipitation mean for folks like K-Brad in Ashley County?
Yeah, bifurcated is a good word for it. When we look at the big picture for Ashley County this autumn, it really is shaping up to be a season of pretty significant transitions and, frankly, a real tug of war between competing climate influences.
The tug of war, okay.
The core findings from all the analysis really underscore this.
Yeah.
We're talking about persistent, significant, above-average temperatures.
Yeah.
That's pretty clear. That feeling of summer is likely going to linger much deeper into the fall than usual. But it's the precipitation, the rainfall regime, that's going to be truly dynamic. That's where the bifurcated comes in. Think of it like a rainfall story with two very distinct chapters.
Two chapters, bifurcated meaning split in two. That sounds like a pretty stark contrast for rainfall. But how distinct are we talking? Is it like a clean break, or, could there be a messy middle where both influences are still kind of battling it out? That sounds like it would make forecasting tricky.
That's a great question. It's probably more of a staggered influence than a completely clean break,
Yeah.
But the distinction, I think, will become quite clear as the season progresses. You can definitely expect distinct wet and dry phases.
Okay.
The two primary drivers behind this whole setup are, first, a very active tropical season, the Atlantic hurricane season, which is already underway and could deliver some significant rainfall events. And second, the emergence of what looks to be a weak La Nina event developing out in the equatorial Pacific.
Right, La Nina. We hear about that one a lot.
Exactly. And this combination, it isn't just a meteorological curiosity. It means a really unique mix of serious weather challenges could converge on the area, demanding significant vigilance and, honestly, thoughtful strategic planning from everyone in the region.
A unique mix of serious challenges that definitely gets your attention. So if we break autumn down, you're saying it's effectively going to unfold in two distinct halves almost.
Right.
Defined by which of these powerful climate drivers has the upper hand at any given time.
Precisely. It's a really good way to think about it. Let's look at the first half first, say from mid-August running through October.
Okay.
This period is likely going to be dominated by that continued, almost summer-like heat. We're talking about days that still feel very much like August, well into September, maybe even pushing into early October. But here's the critical part. This same period also carries a heightened risk of heavy rainfall. And that's particularly because of what's forecast to be an above-normal Atlantic hurricane season.
Right, the hurricane connection.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, and it introduces a significant wild card for Ashley County. September, historically, is the driest month of the entire year for the region, usually very little rain.
The driest, okay. So a potential conflict there.
A huge potential conflict.
Right.
Because decaying tropical systems, even ones that make landfall hundreds of miles away, can track inland and completely upend that historical dryness. They become these massive moisture carriers.
Yep.
They could bring either prolonged dry spells, ironically, if their circulation sort of steers other rain systems away, or, on the flip side, they could stall out and lead to severe multi-day flooding. It's truly a high-stakes period for precipitation variability. You need to be ready for both extremes, really.
Wow, that really is a feast or famine scenario to kick off the fall. Okay, so we start with this lingering summer heat and the unpredictable punch of hurricanes potentially bringing floods even during the normally driest month. What about the second half, say November through December as we head towards Christmas?
That's when the climatic influence seems poised to shift quite decisively. The developing La Niña pattern out in the Pacific is expected to really take hold and assert its dominance over North American weather patterns.
Okay, La Nina takes over.
Right. Now, this will likely sustain that warmer-than-average trend we saw early on, so still mild overall, but, and this is the big shift, it's expected to usher in increasingly drier than normal conditions.
Drier, okay.
And this late-season dryness is particularly concerning because, remember, November and December are typically some of the wettest months of the year for Ashley County. That's when they usually get their recharge.
Right, you mentioned that inversion earlier.
Exactly.
Yep.
So for this forecast to defy that historical wet trend, it poses a considerable risk for the rapid onset of drought. This isn't just, an academic point. It could significantly impact agriculture, strain water resources like ponds and reservoirs, and definitely elevate wildfire potential as we head into the winter of 2025-2026. So KBRAD and the ACN community really need to watch both sides of this coin: flood risk early, drought risk late.
So you're genuinely talking about a season where we could swing from worrying about flooding to worrying about drought, all within maybe 2 or 3 months, and potentially even experience both extremes. That's a lot to wrap your head around. Definitely needs a flexible approach. And you also teased something earlier about a secondary severe weather season. That sounds counterintuitive for fall.
That's absolutely right, and it's a critical point for this forecast. This year, the combination of that persistent, unseasonable warmth, that warmer-than-average trend, plus readily available moisture still hanging around from the Gulf of Mexico. Well, when that clashes with the eventual arrival of strong winter cold fronts,
The clash.
that clash creates an environment that looks ripe for a potentially active and impactful secondary severe weather season. The risk seems especially pronounced during November and potentially December. We'll definitely dig deeper into the insidious nature of this threat later, but it's a critical point for readiness, especially since it might catch people off guard after a long, warm fall.
Okay, insidious threat. Definitely want to come back to that. I like this tug-of-war concept you mentioned between the two main drivers. La Nina, usually meaning drier, versus an active hurricane season bringing potential wet extremes. How do these signals, which sound like opposites, actually interact? It really does sound like they're competing for control over Ashley County's weather.
They absolutely are competing, in a sense. And understanding this dynamic is fundamental to grasping this forecast, I think. On the surface, yeah, it might seem contradictory. La Nina typically nudges the storm track north, leading to suppressed storm activity and drier conditions, especially for the southern U.S. in winter.
Right.
Meanwhile, an above-normal hurricane season obviously signals more chances for intense rainfall from tropical systems. But they aren't contradictory so much as their main influence is staggered. Think of it like two different phases of a relay race.
Ah, okay, a relay race. I like that.
Yeah, the threat from tropical systems, the hurricanes, and their remnants is most acute. Their strongest impact is generally from August through October. They're kind of front-loaded in the autumn season.
Got it.
The influence of La Nina, while it starts to emerge in the fall, typically asserts its strongest, most consistent effects on our weather patterns from late fall through the winter months.
Yeah.
That's when it really digs in and dominates the pattern.
So it really is like a season of two distinct halves,
Yeah.
defined by which climate driver has the stronger hand or the baton at that time.
Exactly. You got it. This dynamic is precisely what explains why the period through October will likely be characterized by that high variability precipitation regime we talked about.
High variability, meaning
Meaning, for KBRAD and Ashley County, you could experience extended dry spells. Days, maybe even weeks, with no significant rain, leading to rapidly drying soils. And then, boom, that could be abruptly punctuated by a drenching, potentially flood-producing event from a tropical remnant.
feast or famine, like you said.
Exactly, a true feast or famine scenario in early autumn. But then, from November onward, as that tropical season effectively winds down, the La Nina signal is expected to become the dominant influence. And that tips the scales quite decisively toward a drier than normal pattern. And this whole nuanced progression has critical implications across the board for agriculture, water resource management, emergency preparedness. The region absolutely must be ready for both significant flood risks and the potential rapid onset of drought, all within the span of the same season. It really demands a high degree of adaptability and proactive planning.
That's a truly fascinating breakdown of these big forces. It really does sound like Ashley County is caught right in the middle of this atmospheric drama. Before we dive even deeper into the forecast itself, month by month, it's always good to set the stage. What does a typical autumn look like for Ashley County? Why is understanding that normal so important for judging this year's forecast?
Establishing that climatological baseline is absolutely crucial, because it gives us the canvas, right, the background against which we can paint the picture of this specific forecast. It lets us clearly see how the projected conditions for autumn 2025 deviate from the historical norm. And that helps us understand the true significance of those differences.
Makes sense.
Ashley County sits there in the humid subtropical climate zone of southern Arkansas. It's a region known for its, warm, humid summers and generally mild, relatively wet winters. Its weather goes through a pretty profound and usually predictable transformation between mid-August and December. This period covers the decline of summer's really oppressive heat, the arrival of that brief, often truly pleasant autumn, and then the eventual onset of cooler, often wetter winter conditions. And we have good historical data, especially from the long-term climate station down in Crossett. That gives us a very clear, reliable picture of this expected seasonal ebb and flow.
Okay, so how does that transition usually play out from the, dog days of summer to the chill of winter? Are there specific milestones, temperature shifts, maybe atmospheric changes that residents typically notice?
Yeah, there are definitely distinct thermal and atmospheric milestones that define Ashley County's typical autumn. The hot season, and we define that by average daily high temps consistently staying above 85 degrees Fahrenheit, that usually persists from late May all the way until about September 23rd, so summer hangs on tight.
Late September.
Conversely, the cool season, where the average daily highs consistently dip below 62 degrees Fahrenheit, that usually kicks in around November 27th and lasts through late February.
So late November for the real cool down.
Right. And the period in between, roughly late September through late November, that's what we consider the true autumn season. That fleeting, often really cherished window of ideal weather.
The sweet spot.
Exactly, the sweet spot. And this transition also brings a noticeable change atmospherically. The clearer part of the year, with less cloud cover, more sunshine, generally lasts until mid-November. In fact, October really stands out as the clearest month on average. The sky is classified as clear, mostly clear, or partly cloudy, about 67% of the time. A real gift after the summer haze.
Right.
But after about November 18th, cloud cover starts to increase pretty substantially, signaling the approach of winter's more unsettled, often grayer weather patterns. These shifts are really what shape daily life and activity down there.
That's a great overview of the typical shifts. Let's get into the specifics now, month by month, using those historical climate normals. What does August usually bring to Ashley County as we, kick off this forecast period?
August. Well, August remains firmly and often pretty uncomfortably in summer's grip. It's typically the second hottest month of the year for Ashley County. You're looking at a sweltering average high temperature of 92 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oof, 92 average high.
Yeah. And the overnight lows don't offer much relief either, usually ranging between 69 and 72 degrees, so those nights feel very sticky. You need the AC running constantly for comfort.
Definitely.
Now, while it's still quite hot and humid, August actually marks a slight downturn in overall precipitation compared to the wetter months of early summer. It averages about 3.61 inches of rain. Most of that usually comes from, pop-up afternoon thunderstorms, not big organized systems.
Gotcha. And September, the month you said could be a wild card this year because of hurricanes. What's normal for September in Ashley County?
September normally brings the first subtle, often really highly anticipated signs of autumn. The average high temperatures moderate slightly, dropping to about 87 degrees, still warm, but not quite as brutal.
A little better.
And the average lows fall into a more comfortable, sometimes even crisp range of 61 to 66 degrees. You start to feel that little hint of fall in the morning air, even if the afternoons are still warm.
Okay.
But here's the critical point for September, and it's why this year's forecast is so notable. Historically, it is the driest month of the entire year for Ashley County. It averages only about 3.35 inches of precipitation.
Only 3 1/3 inches.
Okay. Right. And this characteristic historical dryness is what makes the potential for those tropical system remnants this year even more impactful. Any significant rain event in September would be a dramatic departure from the norm.
Understood. Now, October often feels like that sweet spot for many places, doesn't it? What's the climate normal for October in Ashley County, the month everyone looks forward to?
It absolutely is the sweet spot.
Huh.
October is widely considered the most pleasant month climatically down there, a real reward after the long, sticky summer. Daytime temperatures become wonderfully comfortable, average high of 77 degrees.
Perfect.
And the overnight lows turn crisp, averaging between 49 and 55 degrees. Perfect weather for throwing open the windows at night.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned, it boasts the clearest skies of the year. Nearly 70% clear or partly cloudy days. Ideal for all sorts of outdoor stuff, local festivals, high school football, just enjoying the fall colors without sweating through your shirt.
Right.
Precipitation also begins its seasonal rebound in October. The monthly average increases to a more robust 4.96 inches, providing some much-needed moisture as the landscape starts to dry out a bit from late summer.
Okay, almost 5 inches. And then we move into November, which you flagged as potentially a big month for severe weather this year.
Well,
What's a typical November like before we add in all these 2025 factors?
November marks the definitive arrival of late autumn coolness and a real shift in the overall atmospheric mood. Average highs drop further to around 66 degrees Fahrenheit. Average lows fall into the low to mid 40s.
Okay, jacket weather for sure.
Definitely starting to need a heavier jacket in the mornings, yeah. And the evenings have a real chill. This month is also when the cloudier part of the year truly begins. Overcast or mostly cloudy conditions become more frequent. Precipitation normally stays robust, averaging 4.94 inches, almost the same as October. This signals the start of the wetter part of the year, driven by more frequent cold frontal passages sweeping through.
Okay. And finally, December. Still part of our forecast period for Cape Brad. Sounds like full-on winter by then, but what's normal for Ashley County in December?
By December, yeah, the transition to winter is pretty much complete. The chill is undeniable. Average high temperatures are a brisk 56 to 57 degrees Fahrenheit. Average lows are hovering just above freezing, typically between 33 and 40 degrees.
Okay.
You're definitely looking at frosty mornings pretty regularly, needing to bundle up. And significantly, December is usually one of the wettest months of the year for Ashley County. Those frontal systems and dynamic low-pressure systems become much more common, yielding a substantial average of 5.95 inches of precipitation, nearly 6 inches.
Wow, almost 6 inches. That really highlights that dramatic precipitation inversion you talked about, from driest in September to wettest in December.
Exactly. It's a huge swing.
Speaking of those shifts, let's talk about a key milestone for the region, the first frost. Why is that important for planning, beyond just, gardeners covering their tomatoes?
The timing of the first fall frost, yeah, it's a critical milestone for a really wide range of planning. It impacts not just individual gardeners, absolutely, but also larger agricultural operations, pest management strategies, even how communities prepare infrastructure for colder weather.
Okay.
Based on the official 1991 to 2020 climate normals from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the average date of the first fall frost for the Crossett area in Ashley County is November 4th.
November 4th on average.
Right. Now, that specific date signifies a 30% probability, meaning there's about a 3 in 10 chance that a frost will happen on or before November 4th in any given year. It's not a guarantee, it's an average.
Got it. Probability.
And this timing is pretty consistent with the broader regional patterns. Freezes typically hold off until the first couple of weeks of November in southern and southeastern Arkansas. So for Cape Brad, for anyone managing livestock, late-season crops, it's a key date signaling the winding down of the growing season, the need for protective measures. It also impacts things like insect cycles, the hardiness of outdoor pipes, lots of knock-on effects.
Makes sense. You've mentioned this precipitation inversion a few times now. September being driest at about 3.3 inches, December wettest at nearly 6 inches. That's almost double the rain in just 3 months. Can you unpack that a bit more? Why does that happen, and why is it so vital for the region's health, its economy?
It's not just a statistic. It's a really crucial characteristic of Ashley County's climate. Understanding it is key to grasping why this year's forecast is potentially so impactful. The seasonal cycle truly makes this dramatic shift. September, driest, 3.35 inches average. December, wettest, 5.95 inches average. This reflects a fundamental shift in the dominant atmospheric dynamics. In late summer, you often get these stable, high-pressure systems parking over the southern U.S. They act like a lid on the atmosphere, suppressing storm development, leading to those drier, more settled conditions.
The summer high?
Exactly. But as we move into late fall and winter, that pattern gives way to a much more dynamic one. You get more frequent passages of strong low-pressure systems and potent cold fronts that actively scoop up deep moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. These are the classic rainmakers for the region.
Oh, okay. The pattern flips.
It flips. And this rapid increase in late autumn and early winter rain is absolutely vital. It's a critical recharge period for the entire landscape. For farmers in Ashley County, it means the ground gets the moisture needed for planting winter wheat, for pastures to recover before winter dormancy, for overall soil health. For water managers, it's about refilling community reservoirs, countless farm ponds that got drawn down during the summer heat and usage. If these crucial late-season rains fail, well, we're not just a little dry. The region starts the new year with a significant deficit, and that impacts everything from local water supplies and forest health to, importantly, a dramatically increased wildfire risk heading into the spring.
So any disruption to this late season moisture pattern, like the potential dryness from La Nina, we're forecasting it carries a disproportionately high impact compared to, say, a dry spell back in September.
Exactly. It hits harder because it's supposed to be wet. It's the lifeblood recharge for the agricultural and environmental ecosystem heading into the tougher winter months.
That brings us perfectly to the forces at play this year, autumn 2025. It sounds like those historical averages might be in for a serious shakeup. What are the dominant climate drivers we really need to understand for this specific forecast?
Right. While those historical averages give us our crucial baseline, the specific character of this autumn is going to be steered by the interplay of two powerful and, as we've noted, potentially conflicting big-picture phenomena.
Okay.
These are the emergence of a La Nina pattern in the Pacific Ocean and an unusually active hurricane season brewing in the Atlantic Basin. Both of these are expected to exert significant, though as we discussed, somewhat staggered influence over Ashley County's weather this fall.
Let's start with La Nina. We hear that term thrown around a lot, often linked to drier weather here. But for anyone who might not be sure, what exactly is it and what's its status right now as we head into autumn 2025?
Okay, La Nina. It's a recurring climate pattern, part of the bigger El Niño Southern Oscillation, or ENSO, cycle. Basically, it involves cooler than average sea surface waters across a specific, very large region of the central and eastern tropical Pacific Ocean.
Cooler water way out in the Pacific.
Right. Think of the global atmosphere having this giant conveyor belt of air and moisture circulating around the equator, the Walker circulation. La Nina, with its cooler Pacific waters, essentially gives that conveyor belt a nudge. It subtly shifts its typical path and intensity.
Okay, nudge.
As of right now, mid-August 2025, ENSO conditions are officially neutral. That means sea surface temperatures in that key Pacific region are near their long-term average.
Oh.
However, there's a very strong consensus among the major climate models and forecasting centers that a transition is imminent. The Climate Prediction Center, the CPC, has issued a La Nina watch.
A watch. Okay, what's that mean?
It's essentially a heads up. It signals a high probability, they're saying maybe 60–70% chance, that La Nina conditions will develop during the fall months. They're looking for a consistent, sustained chill across a specific part of the Pacific, the Niño 3.4 region, a pattern that holds for 3 consecutive overlapping 3-month seasons, like September, November, October, December, November, January. That consistency is the key signal that La Nina is really digging in and will start to influence global weather patterns, including ours.
So it's about a sustained chill out there, not just a quick dip. And how does this La Nina development typically impact the southern U.S., specifically Arkansas? Does that nudge to the atmospheric conveyor belt translate directly into our local weather here?
It absolutely does.
Mm-hmm.
Those cooler than average waters in the equatorial Pacific alter that global atmospheric circulation pattern, which in turn affects the position and strength of the jet stream over North America.
The jet stream, okay, the storm highway.
Exactly, that fast-moving river of air high above us that steers our weather systems. For the southern United States, including Arkansas, a typical La Nina pattern during the fall and winter months usually results in a more northerly storm track.
Storms go north.
Right. They tend to track further north across the Ohio Valley or the Great Lakes. What this means for Ashley County generally is warmer than average temperatures that allows that extended warmth we talked about, and crucially, drier than average conditions in both fall and winter. Fewer of those classic winter rainmaking storm systems manage to dig far enough south to impact the region directly.
Got it.
So even the development of a relatively weak La Nina, which is what's currently favored, is a powerful signal pointing toward a warm and decidedly dry conclusion to the year for your region.
Okay. Warm and dry from La Nina. That sounds like one side of our tug of war for Ashley County. What about the other side, that active Atlantic hurricane season? How robust is that forecast looking for 2025?
The 2025 Atlantic hurricane season, which officially runs June 1st to November 30th, is indeed the second major climate driver here, and it's shaping up to be quite impactful. Both NOAA and the highly respected Tropical Meteorology Project at Colorado State University have issued forecasts calling for an unequivocally above normal season.
Above normal? How much above?
Well, NOAA's August update, for instance, projects a 50% chance of above normal activity. They're forecasting a range of 13 to 18 named storms. Of those, 5 to 9 are expected to become hurricanes. To put that in perspective, an average season has about 14 named storms and 7 hurricanes, so it's a notable increase.
Okay, definitely elevated. Why? What's driving that?
It's attributed to 2 key factors, primarily. First, warmer than average sea surface temperatures across the tropical Atlantic, the Caribbean, and the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay.
That warm water acts like high-octane fuel for developing storms.
More fuel.
More fuel. And second, the prevailing ENSO-neutral conditions that are transitioning toward La Nina. This usually results in weaker vertical wind shear across the Atlantic basin.
Weaker wind shear.
Think of vertical wind shear as strong winds blowing at different speeds or directions at different heights in the atmosphere. Strong shear can kind of rip the top off a developing storm, disrupting its structure. Weaker shear creates a more favorable, less disruptive environment for storms to form, organize, and intensify. So warm fuel plus less disruption equals a recipe for an active season.
Okay, makes sense. More storms brewing out there. But again, Ashley County is inland, pretty far from the coast. What's the real threat there? It's not like they're bracing for Cat 5 winds, right?
That's such a critical distinction, and it's vital for Cape Brad and the community to really understand this. For an inland location like Ashley County, the primary threat from tropical cyclones is emphatically not the destructive winds or the storm surge you see on the coast. It is almost entirely about widespread heavy rainfall.
Inland flooding.
Inland flooding, exactly. As hurricanes and tropical storms make landfall and move inland, they decay, losing their wind intensity. But these remnant low-pressure systems can still hold on to absolutely vast amounts of tropical moisture, sometimes equivalent to a small ocean's worth, seemingly.
Wow.
They can then stall over a region or move slowly and produce torrential downpours, often lasting for days. This leads to significant flash flooding water rising rapidly in streets, low-lying areas, and also river flooding, where the rivers and creeks swell and overflow their banks, sometimes impacting areas very far from the original landfall point.
And the timing lines up.
Perfectly. The statistical peak of the hurricane season runs from mid-August through mid-October. This aligns exactly with the first half of our forecast period. So an active season forecast translates directly to an elevated risk of one or more high-impact, multi-day rainfall events in Ashley County during late summer and early fall. That could potentially cause serious, even devastating localized flooding.
This is where that seasonal tug-of-war concept really hits home, isn't it? How do these two dominant forces, La Nina pushing towards drier conditions late, hurricanes pushing for extreme wet early, actually play out through the season for people on the ground? It still sounds like a potentially confusing picture.
It's the absolute core of this nuanced forecast.
Yeah.
And understanding the timing is so crucial. On the surface, the developing La Nina suggests a trend toward drier than normal, especially late in the season. The active hurricane season points to an enhanced risk of extreme rainfall events, mainly early.
Right.
These outlooks aren't really contradictory. Rather, as we said, their influence is staggered.
Yeah.
Like that chaotic but choreographed dance. The threat from tropical systems is most acute, most likely to have a direct impact from August through October. They are the initial powerful performers in this seasonal drama. The influence of La Nina, well, it's starting to bubble up in the fall, typically exerts its strongest, most consistent effects on U.S. weather patterns from late fall through the winter months. That's when it really steps onto the main stage and dominates the overall pattern.
So it really is a season of two distinct halves then, defined by which climate driver has the stronger hand at the time. Sounds like you almost need two different playbooks for the same season.
Exactly. That's a perfect way to put it. This dynamic suggests that the period through October will be characterized by that high variability precipitation regime.
Okay, unpack high variability again in practical terms.
Practically, for Ashley County, it means you could experience extended dry spells. The sun beats down. Days or weeks go by with little rain. The ground gets parched. Then, potentially abruptly, that's punctuated by the significant threat of a drenching from a tropical remnant.
Right, the feast or famine, worrying about water restrictions one week, sandbagging the next.
It's entirely possible. Maybe not quite that extreme week to week, but the potential for both scenarios exists within that early autumn time frame. But then, from November onward, as that tropical influence naturally wanes, the La Niña signal is expected to become the dominant force. And that tips the scales pretty decisively toward a drier than normal pattern setting in. And this whole nuanced progression, this shift, has critical implications across the board. Agriculture, water management, emergency preparedness. KBRAD and the ACN community absolutely must be prepared for both significant flood risks in the early season and the potential for rapid onset of drought conditions in the late season, all within the same autumn. It demands a highly flexible, vigilant, and proactive approach to, well, everything from planting decisions to stocking emergency kits.
That's a truly fascinating, if challenging, picture. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty now. The detailed seasonal forecast, breaking it down month by month from mid-August through December 2025. What's it looking like for late summer, mid-August into September regarding that heat and those tropical threats?
All right, the forecast period for Ashley County is indeed kicking off with a continuation of pretty intense summer heat. The National Weather Service has already had heat advisories out for mid-August with heat index values, what it feels like with humidity expected to reach a really stifling 105 to 110 degrees across much of Arkansas.
Oof. Yeah, that's rough. Is it expected to let up soon?
Not quickly, no. The Climate Prediction Center's seasonal outlook for the August, September, October period, what they call ASO, indicates a high probability of above-normal temperatures persisting for nearly the entire southern United States, definitely including Ashley County.
Okay.
This is also corroborated by some of the long-range almanac forecasts. As you take those with a grain of salt, but they align here, calling for a hot August and a September that averages maybe 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit above normal.
2 to 3 degrees above normal still feels pretty warm for September.
It does. And this isn't just about discomfort, right? It really reshapes the rhythm of autumn. Think about traditional fall planting schedules, the start of hunting season, outdoor festivals. They're all tied to a fairly predictable cooling trend. When that heat persists like this,
it throws things off.
It throws things off. It extends stress on livestock, keeps energy demands high for AC, and crucially, it maintains that warm, moist atmospheric fuel source for potential severe weather outbreaks much later in the year than people might expect. It's like autumn has forgotten its cue, and that delay has ripple effects.
Okay, so the heat just keeps coming, blurring the lines between summer and fall well into September. What about precipitation during that same late summer period, considering our tug of war? How do those conflicting signals play out in August and September?
This period, August-September, will be precisely defined by that tug of war, creating that high variability we talked about. Remember, September is historically the driest month.
Yeah.
But the active hurricane season introduces huge uncertainty and the potential for extreme rainfall. The Old Farmer's Almanac specifically notes a hurricane threat south for the Deep South region in late August, and we're already seeing storms forming. The Farmer's Almanac projects thunderstorms for the southeast around Labor Day weekend, then describes it as a tug of war between fair weather and storm systems for the rest of September. That captures the expected back and forth pretty well.
So the official outlook reflects that.
It does. Reflecting this tropical threat, the official CPC outlook for that August, September, October ASO period actually favors above-normal precipitation for much of the eastern third of the country. The greatest chances, over 40% probability, are centered right over the southeast, including Ashley County.
Interesting. So leaning wet despite September normally being dry.
Exactly. So while dry spells are certainly possible within this pattern, especially if strong hurricanes churn way out at sea and suck moisture away from the region, the overarching risk during this period is for a significant tropical moisture-fueled rain event. That means maybe a few days of heavy, widespread downpours that could easily lead to localized flooding. For KBRAD, this means keep a close eye on those tropical forecasts. Even if a storm isn't aiming directly at Arkansas, its remnants can still pack a punch inland.
That brings us to October, which you called a pivot point, often the most beautiful month. What are the expectations for mid-autumn? Does that persistent warmth keep going?
For temperatures in October, yes. The trend of above-normal conditions is forecast to continue. The CPC's outlook for the next 3-month period, September, October, or November, or SON, maintains a pretty clear signal for warmer than normal conditions across the South.
Still warm in October.
Still warmer than average, yeah. This persistent warmth will likely delay the onset of the true cool season. It probably pushes that average first frost date past its typical early November timing for the Crossett area.
Okay.
Now, some almanac forecasts hint at maybe a cooling trend, even suggesting temps might average slightly below normal. But the official government outlooks, based on the more sophisticated climate models, carry more weight here, and they strongly point towards sustained warmth through October. This means folks in Ashley County might enjoy extended pleasant evenings, sure, but it also means the ground stays warm longer, and the potential for any lingering tropical moisture to interact with early cold fronts remains higher than average for October.
Got it. And for precipitation in October, how does that pivot point play out? Are we still watching for tropical remnants, or does La Nina start to dry things out by then?
October genuinely looks like the most likely pivot point in the seasonal precipitation pattern.
Yeah.
The Atlantic hurricane season is still technically active, yes, but the statistical peak has passed by mid-month. That naturally reduces the probability of a direct, high-impact tropical system affecting the region.
Okay, hurricane risk starts fading.
Right. And concurrently, the atmospheric response to that developing La Nina pattern will begin to strengthen its influence over North America. The Farmer's Almanac actually captures this transition idea pretty well, forecasting a pleasant start to October, but then the return of stormy interludes with rain and gusty winds around mid-month.
Transition storms.
Possibly. Yeah. The official CPC outlook for that September, October, November period shows a weakening of the wetter-than-normal signal we saw earlier. It shifts to equal chances for precipitation across Arkansas.
Equal chances, meaning?
Meaning there's no strong tilt towards wetter or drier than average. It suggests a transition period, maybe towards more average, or potentially starting to lean drier as the month progresses. So the threat of those multi-day soaking tropical rains diminishes, and we start to see the initial whispers of that incoming La Nina dryness. It's a month where the atmospheric currents really begin to subtly shift course.
Okay, so the back half of the season, November into December, this is when La Nina really takes hold, and we start transitioning towards winter. What does that mean for temperatures for Kay, Brad, and Ashley County? Will we finally feel a proper chill?
For temperatures in late autumn and early winter, the signal for warmer than average conditions actually becomes remarkably robust, even more confident than earlier.
Wow, still warmer.
Still warmer than average, yeah. The CPC's outlooks for both the October, November, December OND period and the full winter season, December, January, February, show a high probability of above normal temperatures across the entire southern tier of the U.S., definitely including Ashley County. This is really a classic signature of a La Nina winter. That northern shifted jet stream allows warmer southern air to dominate the region more frequently. So you can probably expect fewer truly cold days, potentially delayed hard freezes, and milder overnight lows than average right through December. Now, for many, that might sound pleasant, right, extending the outdoor season, but as we'll discuss in the risks section, this prolonged warmth carries its own set of potential problems, particularly when combined with other factors like incoming cold fronts.
Right, the severe weather risk. Okay, and this is where the dryness really kicks in, correct? What's the precipitation outlook for November and December, which are normally two of Ashley County's wettest months? Does La Nina just override that history?
This period, November-December, is precisely when the forecast points most clearly towards a significant shift to a drier than normal pattern, directly defying that historical precipitation inversion we talked about.
Yeah.
The canonical, or typical, La Nina winter pattern features suppressed storm activity and consequently below-average precipitation for the Gulf Coast states and the Southeast. This is particularly notable because, as you rightly pointed out, November and December are historically two of the wettest months for Ashley County. They're absolutely crucial for recharging soil moisture and reservoirs before winter fully sets in.
But not this year, likely.
Likely not. The 2025 season looks set to defy that historical trend. The CPC seasonal outlooks for OND and the subsequent winter months indicate an increasing probability of below-normal precipitation totals for your region.
Below normal.
Below normal. This developing dryness poses a significant threat for the rapid onset of drought conditions heading into 2026. It means likely less frequent widespread rainfall, fewer soaking events, and a potential struggle for the landscape to receive its necessary late-season moisture boost. That could lead to compounding impacts for agriculture, water resources, and even wildfire risk.
That's a lot to track, especially with those shifts. It sounds like K-Brad and the ACN community need to be incredibly adaptable this autumn. Can you give us just a quick summary snapshot from the Climate Prediction Center's probabilistic forecasts for those main 3-month chunks?
Certainly. Yeah, just to recap the probabilities from the CPC for Ashley County, showing how the odds tilt. For August, September, October, the ASO period, temperatures are leaning above normal, and precipitation is also leaning above normal. That reflects that early season heat and the tropical influence.
Okay, warm and leaning wet early.
Then, as we move into September, October, November, the Sonoran period, temperatures remain leaning above normal, but precipitation shifts to equal chances. That indicates that transition point tropical influence waning, La Nina dryness not fully locked in yet.
Got it. Still warm, precipal uncertain mid-season.
Finally, for October, November, December, the O&D period, temperatures are still leaning above normal, but precipitation definitively shifts to leaning below normal. That highlights the significant shift toward drier conditions in the later part of autumn as La Nina really takes hold.
Okay. And just to clarify, leaning means a higher probability for that outcome, but it's not a guarantee, right? And equal chances means no clear signal either way.
Exactly. Leaning means the odds favor that outcome, maybe 40–50% chance depending on the map, but other outcomes are still possible. Equal chances means the models don't show a strong signal for above, near, or below normal, suggesting higher uncertainty or variability is likely.
Okay. This all boils down to some pretty important risks for folks living in Ashley County, influencing everything from daily life to longer-term planning. Let's really dig into what these patterns mean for them. First, that secondary severe weather season potential. You mentioned Arkansas has one. Many people think severe weather is mainly a spring thing. What does the state usually experience in fall and winter, and why is this year looking particularly primed?
Yeah, well, spring is absolutely the primary severe weather season in Arkansas. The state does have a well-documented and, frankly, quite dangerous secondary season in the fall and early winter. This isn't just a minor blip.
How significant is it?
Analysis of tornado data from 2000 up to 2022 reveals a really remarkable and sobering statistic. 38%, nearly 4 out of 10 of all tornadoes in Arkansas during that period actually occurred between September and February.
Wow, 38% outside of spring. That's huge.
It is. This secondary peak in activity happens in about 2 out of every 3 years. And November, in particular, stands out as a notorious month, averaging 5 tornadoes statewide historically. It marks a significant spike in activity.
Okay. And what causes these fall-winter storms?
These cold season severe weather events are typically triggered by a very specific meteorological setup. You need a strong dynamic storm system, or maybe just a potent cold front, diving south from the northern plains or the Rockies. And that has to collide with an unseasonably warm and humid air mass that gets drawn northward from the Gulf of Mexico. It's that sharp clash, the meeting of those two very different air masses, that creates the explosive potential.
The clash of air masses. So why is autumn 2025 looking particularly primed for this kind of intense, severe weather? Are all those ingredients really lining up?
Unfortunately, yes. The forecast for this autumn 2025 seems to contain all the necessary ingredients for a potentially active and potentially quite dangerous secondary severe weather season.
Like what?
Well, first, that persistent above-normal temperature trend we keep talking about, driven partly by the background La Nina pattern. That provides the requisite unseasonable warmth. It means Ashley County will likely maintain more summer-like temperatures deep into November, maybe even December, keeping the lower atmosphere warm and primed.
Okay, the warmth is there.
Second, the Gulf of Mexico waters are still quite warm, recovering from the active hurricane season. That serves as a ready source of deep moisture and instability, the fuel for the storms.
Got the fuel.
Then third, you get the triggers. Those potent cold fronts will inevitably start tracking across the country with more frequency in November and December as winter tries to assert itself. When those fronts die south and collide with that warm, moist Gulf air mass sitting over the lower Mississippi Valley, including Ashley County, that clash could be quite volatile. It creates an environment highly conducive to the development of strong to severe thunderstorms, capable of producing damaging straight-line winds, large hail, and unfortunately tornadoes. It really is like setting the stage for a potential meteorological showdown later in the season.
You called this an insidious threat earlier. What did you mean by that? How can prolonged warmth actually be dangerous in this context? It sounds pleasant.
The nature of this year's forecast presents what I'd call a particularly insidious threat, yeah? Because the prolonged, warmer-than-average conditions deep into autumn might subtly lull residents into a false sense of security.
How so?
Pleasant, mild days in November can feel more like early October, right? Bright sunshine, comfortable temperatures. It makes people think, winter's going to be mild or the threat of severe weather must be over. But That very warmth is precisely what's fueling the potential severity of storms when they do hit.
Ah, it's deceptive.
Highly deceptive. This unseasonable warmth allows the atmosphere to hold on to tremendous amounts of energy, instability, and moisture. So, when a powerful cold front does finally arrive, the difference in temperature and moisture between the warm air ahead of it and the cold, dry air behind it could be far more extreme than in a typical year.
A sharper contrast.
A much sharper atmospheric boundary. That can lead to stronger lift in the atmosphere, more explosive thunderstorm development, potentially resulting in more intense, more widespread, and maybe even more rapidly developing severe weather outbreaks. So the risk isn't just that severe weather will occur, but that its onset could be sudden, and its impact amplified by the very conditions that made the preceding days feel so nice. It's a dangerous setup.
So the key takeaway, the actionable advice here for KBRAD and the ACN community is, don't let your guard down on those beautiful, warm, late autumn days. They aren't necessarily a sign of safety, but potentially a key ingredient setting the stage for severe weather. Vigilance is crucial, even when it feels mild.
Exactly. Absolutely critical. Stay weather aware, have a plan, especially when you see those strong cold fronts approaching in the forecast during November and December.
Okay. Next risk, the tropical system and inland flooding threat. We touched on this, but let's reiterate. How does an above-normal Atlantic season really translate into a direct threat for Ashley County so far from the coast?
Right. The forecast for an above-normal Atlantic hurricane season directly elevates the risk of inland flooding in Ashley County, period, despite its distance from the coast. While the county is safe from the wind and surge, it's well within the typical track area for remnant tropical systems moving inland.
Okay.
As these storms move ashore and weaken over land, they lose the hurricane-force winds, the eye disappears. But they often retain that vast reservoir of tropical moisture we talked about. Inches and inches worth of potential rain.
Still carrying the water.
Still carrying loads of water. This moisture can then be released as widespread, multi-day heavy rainfall events. This can cause rapid rises on local rivers, creeks, bayous, leading to significant flash flooding, inundating roads, underpasses, low-lying homes and businesses, and also broader river flooding that can swamp agricultural fields, cut off rural communities, and damage infrastructure across the region. And the primary window for this specific threat, mid-August through October, perfectly coinciding with the peak of the hurricane season.
So for residents, especially maybe those living near creeks, rivers, or in known low spots, monitoring all tropical developments closely during that August-October timeframe is essential, even if the storm is way out in the Gulf or headed for Florida.
Absolutely critical. Staying informed about tropical depressions, tropical storms, hurricanes, even if they seem far away, is vital. Their remnants can bring devastating, life-threatening rain hundreds of miles inland. You need to know your local flood risk, have an evacuation plan if you're in a flood-prone area, and crucially, never ever attempt to drive through flooded roadways. Turn around, don't drown, it's a serious threat.
Good advice. Okay, finally, let's talk about the other extreme. The threat of drought conditions developing, especially in that second half of autumn when La Niña really takes hold. This feels like the complete opposite of worrying about tropical floods.
It is the opposite extreme, and it's a significant concern, particularly for the latter half of the forecast period. It's the direct consequence of that bifurcated precipitation pattern.
How so? Where are things now?
Well, as of mid-August, the hot and dry conditions over the summer have already started to deplete surface moisture across much of Arkansas. The ground is getting thirsty. This actually prompted the Climate Prediction Center to identify the lower Mississippi Valley as an area at risk for what they call rapid onset drought.
Rapid onset drought.
Yeah, think of it like a sponge.
Yeah.
Even if it's not bone dry to start, if it consistently misses its scheduled soakings, especially the big ones it usually gets in late fall, it can go from just damp to completely parched incredibly fast. Faster than a typical slow developing drought. That's rapid onset. Now, this initial moisture deficit will be modulated by whatever happens with tropical activity in the early fall. Here's how it compounds. If significant rainfall from a tropical system fails to materialize during September or October, or if those systems track elsewhere, then the region enters late fall November with a pre-existing moisture deficit.
Already behind the 8 ball.
Exactly. Then, the subsequent transition to that drier-than-normal La Niña pattern in November and December would likely accelerate and significantly intensify drought conditions. It would make things much worse than just a normal seasonal dry spell.
And what are the real-world consequences of that kind of potentially worsening drought heading into winter for Cape Breton, and particularly the agricultural community in Ashley County?
Oh, it could have really serious and far-reaching consequences.
Yeah.
For Cape Breton and many in Ashley County, agriculture is just fundamental, right? Major crops like rice, soybeans, cotton, plus significant timber operations.
Right.
If those critical late autumn rains, the ones associated with that normal precipitation inversion, if they fail because of La Nina, it's not just a statistic on a chart. It means a direct hit to the health of pastures needed for livestock heading into winter. It means a struggle for winter wheat to get established properly after planting. It means real problems potentially for replenishing crucial farm ponds and even community water reservoirs.
And beyond farming.
Beyond agriculture, very dry conditions significantly increase the risk of wildfires heading into the winter months, especially if dormant vegetation like grasses and leaves remain parched. So, yeah, while the early part of autumn might see worries about too much water, the latter part could see a serious and impactful lack of it, creating a fundamental challenge to the region's economic and environmental health. It could easily stretch into the new year, 2026.
Wow. Okay, this has been an incredibly thorough look at what's shaping up for Ashley County this autumn. It is crystal clear that this isn't going to be a set it and forget it kind of season. So just to kind of recap this whole deep dive, it really boils down to two big overarching themes for K-Brad and the ACN community to keep in mind, right?
That's exactly right. For Ashley County, from mid-August right through Christmas 2025, the period looks to be defined by two dominant themes. First, persistent above-average temperatures, meaning a longer feel of summer, delayed deep chills, but also that warmth fueling other risks.
Okay, theme one, persistent warmth.
And theme two, a dynamic two-part precipitation regime. That's the early season flood risk, driven by potential tropical activity, which then shifts quite decisively, it appears, to a late-season drought risk as La Nina takes hold and suppresses rainfall during what should be the wet season.
Theme two, flood risk early, drought risk late.
Got it. So for K-Brad Barfield, for everyone following ACN, what's the bottom line? What's the call to action here? What should they be strategically planning for, given these unique patterns? I think it really boils down to vigilance and strategic planning across all sectors, from agriculture, water management, down to emergency services, and literally every household.
Okay, like what specifically?
Okay, first, plan for that prolonged warmth. Yes, maybe an extended growing season, delayed first frosts, but also potentially increased energy demands for lingering AC use, potential stress on livestock if heat lingers. And remember that warmth is a key ingredient for severe weather potential later in the season.
Right. Plan for warmth and its side effects.
Second, actively monitor that dual precipitation threat. Be prepared for both potential flooding in the early fall. Keep a very close eye on every tropical system, no matter how far away it seems initially, and the potential for rapid onset of drought conditions in the late fall. Start thinking about water conservation early, perhaps.
Flood prep early, drought prep late.
And third, maintain high vigilance for severe weather. Those atmospheric ingredients we discussed look like they'll be in place for a potentially active secondary severe weather season, particularly in November and December. Critically, the pleasant, mild weather that might precede these events should absolutely not lead to complacency. It's actually more of a warning sign this year.
Don't be fooled by nice weather in November.
Okay.
So review safety plans, make sure you have multiple ways to get warnings, stay weather aware, especially when those sharp temperature changes are forecast, or a strong cold front is shown colliding with that lingering warmth. It really sounds like a season demanding constant adaptation.
Precisely. Constant adaptation is a great way to put it. And maybe just one final thought to leave you with, K-Brad, and everyone listening. Always remember that long-range forecasting like this is inherently probabilistic.
Right. It's about likelihoods.
It's about likelihoods, not guarantees. We've laid out the most probable atmospheric trajectory based on the latest data, the best model guidance we have right now. But it's absolutely crucial to keep monitoring the updated short-term forecasts from your local National Weather Service office and the revised seasonal outlooks that the Climate Prediction Center puts out monthly as these key climate drivers continue to evolve through the autumn. The atmosphere is always dynamic, and while we've charted the most likely course, unexpected twists and turns can always emerge.
That's a great reminder. Given these competing forces, this potential for such starkly opposite extremes all within one season, It really isn't just about what the weather will do, is it? It's more about how we adapt our daily lives, our community planning, our business operations to navigate a season that truly demands readiness for seemingly opposite extremes. So maybe the question for you, K-Brad, and all of ACN's followers is, what's one step you can take today to start preparing for these unique patterns shaping up around you this autumn?